Nothing prepares you for the moment you find your wife in another man's arms. In one heartbeat, my entire world came crashing down. The woman I loved had betrayed me, both in her heart and in our bed. That was the day everything I believed about my life, about our family, was shattered. I remember the heavy silence in the house that afternoon. The air was thick with the smell of rain and something else. Something I couldn't place at first. Cologne that wasn't mine. I had come home early from work to surprise my wife Lauren with her favorite takeout for lunch. Our two kids, 11-year-old Emily and 9-year-old Jake, were still at school, so I thought it would be a rare chance for a quiet meal together. I never expected to walk into a nightmare. As I pushed open our bedroom door, my heart stopped. There, tangled in our sheets, was Lauren with someone I'd never seen before. A stranger, half-dressed, scrambling away from my wife as I stood frozen in the doorway. For a second, none of us moved or spoke. The shock pinned us in place. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. I couldn't breathe. My brain was trying to reject what my eyes were seeing. This couldn't be real. This couldn't be happening in the home we built, in the bed we shared for over a decade. Naidoa Dias. The stranger, a man with a panicked look in his eyes, grabbed his shirt from the floor and bolted past me, practically knocking me aside as he fled out the front door into the pouring rain. I barely registered him. All my attention was on Lauren. She had pulled a sheet around herself and was calling my name, Michael. Michael, please! But I couldn't hear anything past the roaring in my ears. My hands were trembling so violently that I dropped the takeout bag onto the carpet, red curry sauce spreading across the floor. In that moment, I felt something inside me break into a million pieces. How could you? I finally choked out. My voice didn't even sound like mine. It was raw, strangled. Lauren's face was a mask of shock and guilt. Tears were already streaming down her cheeks as she stumbled toward me, bare shoulders shaking. I stepped back instinctively, raising a hand to keep her away. I couldn't bear for her to touch me. "How could you do this to us?" I shouted, my voice cracking on the words. I realized I was crying too, hot tears blurring my vision as I looked at the woman I thought I knew. She started sobbing, repeating, "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry," over and over like a broken record. I had never seen her so desperate. But her apologies meant nothing in that moment. All I could see was the image of her with him, entwined in our bed. My stomach lurched, and I thought I might vomit right there. The betrayal, the disgust, the heartbreak, it all hit me at once like a tidal wave. I wanted answers, but part of me was terrified to hear them. Still, I yelled, demanding, "Who was that? How long, Lauren?" I could barely form coherent sentences. My hands raked through my hair as I paced a few steps, my mind racing. "How long has this been going on?" I shouted, each word hurting more than the last. Lauren was shaking, holding the sheet tightly around her as if it could shield her from what she'd done. Between sobs, she managed to get out a few words. He's just someone from work. I never meant for this." She was gasping for air, tears running down her red face. "It just happened. I'm sorry, Michael. I never wanted to hurt you." "Just someone from work?" I repeated, bitter and disbelieving. My voice rose with anger I didn't know I had in me. "You brought someone from work into our home? Into our bed?" I slammed my fist against the doorframe without thinking. The pain shot up my arm, but I welcomed it. It was real, unlike this surreal nightmare I was trapped in. She flinched at my outburst, her sobs growing louder. "It was a mistake," she cried out. "Please, if you'll just let me explain." I cut her off, rage and anguish twisting inside me. "Explain? There's nothing that makes this okay." "Nothing!" I shouted. My voice echoed down the hallway. I kept picturing Emily's drawings taped to the fridge, Jake's little sneakers by the door. All the pieces of our life that made this house a home. How could she risk all of that? "We have a family, Lauren. Emily and Jake. Did you even think of them? Did you think of us at all?" I was nearly hysterical, my whole body shaking. She collapsed onto the edge of the bed, face in her hands, wailing. I know I messed up. I know," she sobbed, words muffled. For a moment, I just stood there, watching the woman I'd loved for 14 years cry into our bedsheets, the same sheets she had just defiled with another man. I felt a cold emptiness spreading in my chest, as if my heart had been hollowed out. I realized I was looking at a stranger. The kind, loving person I thought I married was nowhere in sight. I couldn't stand being in that room another second. I turned and stumbled down the hallway. My legs felt like jelly. I ended up in the living room, staring blankly at the family photos on the wall. The four of us smiling at Disneyland last summer, the candid of Lauren and me dancing in the kitchen, the kids' first day of school. Each smiling face was a lie. A reminder of how happy I thought we were. A strangled cry escaped my throat, and I punched the wall beside the mantel, leaving a dent in the drywall and pain blooming in my knuckles. I sank onto the couch, burying my face in my hands. My mind was in free fall. What am I going to do? How do I protect my kids from this? How do I fix? No, there's no fixing this. This is our life now. Broken. Lauren approached tentatively a few minutes later, wearing a robe now, her eyes swollen and pleading. I looked up at her, and in a voice barely above a whisper, I asked the question that was eating me alive. Why? It came out as a whimper. Why would you do this? We were happy. At least I was. Weren't you? My voice cracked, the last words almost inaudible. She knelt on the floor a few feet away from me, as if afraid to come closer. Tears kept falling down her face. I don't know, she stammered. I didn't mean for it to go so far. We've been having problems for a while. And I was feeling lonely, and he was just there for me, listening. It started as just talking, I swear. I never thought I would. She broke off, choking on her words. Lonely? I echoed, a fresh wave of hurt washing over me. I thought I had been a good husband. Not perfect, but caring and present. We hardly ever fought. We still had date nights when we could, albeit rarely with our busy lives and the kids. I worked long hours at times, but it was for us, for the family. Had that made her feel lonely? She'd never said anything about it. She wiped her nose with the back of her hand. I'm not excusing it. I'm trying to be honest, she cried softly. It's my fault. I let it get out of hand. I never wanted to hurt you, Michael. I just shook my head in disbelief. But you did. You didn't just hurt me, Lauren. You've broken our family, I said. My voice flat and cold. I felt drained of all energy, like I'd aged 10 years in the past 10 minutes. We sat there in silence, her kneeling on the floor crying quietly, me hunched on the couch in shock. The only sound was the rain drumming against the windows and our ragged breathing. I don't know how long we stayed like that. Eventually, I heard the distant sound of the school bus brakes squealing to a stop at the end of our street. The kids would be home any minute. My heart clenched. Emily and Jake, they couldn't walk into us like this. I stood up abruptly, wiping my face with my sleeve, trying to compose myself. Lauren looked up at me, alarmed, as if unsure what I might do. The kids, I muttered. My voice was hoarse from shouting and crying. We have to pull it together for them. They can't see this. I gestured vaguely at the rumpled bed down the hall, at the curry still spilled on the floor, at the mess of our lives in that moment. Lauren nodded frantically, sniffing and trying to straighten herself. I could see the terror in her eyes now. Not fear of me, but fear of what our children would think if they found out. She hurried to wipe her face, hide any trace of what had happened. I grabbed the takeout bag off the floor with a shaking hand, tossing it in the kitchen trash, and hastily wiped at the red stain on the carpet with a dish towel. There was no time to truly clean up, but I didn't care. The only thing I cared about was shielding Emily and Jake from this nightmare for as long as possible. A few moments later, the front door swung open, and I heard their voices ringing through the hall. "Daddy, Mommy, we're home," Jake shouted, his backpack thudding onto the floor. I forced a smile onto my face that I'm sure looked painful and unnatural, but I had to try. Lauren had retreated to the bedroom to throw on clothes, so I stepped forward to greet the kids alone, praying they wouldn't sense anything wrong. Jake came barreling into the living room, all energy, his 9-year-old cheeks flushed from racing his sister from the bus stop. Emily followed more slowly, already eyeing me with that clever gaze of hers that never missed a thing. "You're home early, Dad," she said, a little confused smile on her face. "Thought I'd surprise you," I managed to say, my voice strained but upbeat. "Figured I'd get takeout for lunch with Mom and have it ready when you got back from school. Maybe an after-school treat." The lie tasted bitter on my tongue and my hands were still trembling, so I shoved them into my pockets. "That's cool," Jake grinned. He noticed the towel and the wet curry stain I'd only partly dabbed up. "Whoa, what happened there?" he asked, pointing at the carpet. My heart skipped. In my rush, I hadn't cleaned it fully. Emily's eyes followed his finger and she frowned at the mess, then looked back at me. "Dad, are you okay?" "Your eyes are red." I realized I hadn't really looked in a mirror. I probably looked like a wreck. My daughter's face was full of concern now, and that almost broke me again on the spot. I fumbled for an explanation. I spilled some food and it was spicy and the smell got in my eyes." I lied poorly, avoiding her gaze. Just then, Lauren emerged from the hallway dressed in jeans and a sweatshirt, her hair pulled back in a hasty ponytail. She had composed herself, but up close I could see her eyes were red and puffy too. "Hey kiddos," she called out in a voice that almost sounded normal. "Dad's right, he came home with a surprise lunch. Why don't you wash up and we'll all eat together, huh?" Emily looked between me and her mother suspiciously. Jake, blissfully unaware, just shrugged and went to wash his hands, excited for the treat. Emily lingered, still scrutinizing us. For a terrifying moment, I wondered if she could somehow smell what had happened, if the scent of betrayal or the tension in the air was obvious to a child's intuition. But at last she just said quietly, "Okay, I'll be right back," and followed her brother. Lauren and I stood frozen, a few feet apart, until the kids were out of earshot. I heard water running in the bathroom down the hall. I finally let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. She whispered, "Michael, what do we do?" Her voice cracked. I saw fresh tears welling up and she quickly wiped them. I realized my fists were clenched so hard my nails bit into my palms. "Mefe, what do we do? God, I had no idea." Everything was broken, but we were about to sit down and have lunch with our children as if nothing had happened. It felt grotesque, like playing house in the ruins of our marriage. My jaw tightened. "We act normal," I whispered back, barely containing the quiver in my voice. "For them, we pretend everything's fine. And then, I don't know. I truly didn't." "What conversation could possibly come after that?" Lauren nodded, biting her lip hard as if to stop it from trembling. Then she turned away to set the table, each movement mechanical and fraught. I took the containers of food from the counter and began plating the lukewarm curry and rice, my mind completely numb. A few minutes later, the four of us sat at the dining table. I can't remember a single word of what we talked about, or how I managed to get through that meal. I must have asked the kids about school, and they probably chattered on about their day, but all I recall is the sound of my own heart pounding and the taste of nothing in my mouth. I doubt I ate more than a few bites, forcing smiles and nodding while my world silently collapsed. Emily kept looking at us like she knew something was off, but she didn't press. After lunch, I sent the kids to the living room to watch TV while I busied myself at the sink, washing dishes with trembling hands. I could hear them giggling at a cartoon, blissfully unaware of the storm that was tearing through their family. Lauren came up beside me with a few more plates. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then, in a low voice, she said, "We need to talk. Not now, but tonight, after they're asleep." I didn't look at her. I just shut off the faucet and stared out the window at the rain. My voice was barely a whisper. "Fine. Tonight." Even saying that much felt like too much. She nodded and quietly left to join the kids, leaving me alone in the kitchen with the clinking of dishes and the drum of rain on the roof. I closed my eyes, trying to hold back another surge of tears. How were we ever going to get through this? Aftermath and confession. I somehow made it through the rest of that awful day in a daze. I helped Emily with her math homework that afternoon, sitting at the kitchen table as if everything were normal while my mind was miles away. I caught myself staring blankly at the same problem for minutes, my thoughts looping back to Lauren and that man every time I let my guard down. Lauren kept to herself mostly, busying herself with chores that didn't really need doing. Folding laundry that was already folded, cleaning a clean countertop, anything to avoid the heavy silence between us. By evening, the tension in the house was suffocating. I cooked a simple dinner, though I had no appetite, just to keep up the facade for the kids. We all sat together at the table again, forcing small talk. Lauren barely spoke, other than to mumble that she was tired. If the kids noticed their mom's unusual quietness or my forced smiles, they didn't say it out loud. After dinner, we had the familiar distraction of the kids' bedtime routine, bath, pajamas. A quick story for Jake. It felt almost peaceful, tucking them in. A slice of normalcy that made my heart ache because I knew it might be one of the last times that normal was real. Emily gave me an extra long hug before bed and whispered, "Love you, Dad." I nearly broke down right there, but I managed to whisper back, "I love you too, Em, so much." When both kids were finally asleep, I steeled myself for the conversation I'd been dreading all day. Lauren was waiting for me in the living room, perched on the edge of the armchair, arms wrapped around herself. She looked exhausted and terrified. I probably looked much the same. I sat down on the couch, not too close to her. For a long moment, we just stayed there in heavy silence. Finally, I spoke, my voice barely above a whisper in the dim lamplight. "Talk." It was an invitation, or maybe a challenge. Lauren wiped her eyes and nodded shakily. "Okay," she said. "I want to tell you everything. You deserve to know the truth." She took a trembling breath, staring down at her hands. "First, please, just remember I am so sorry, Michael." I didn't respond, my jaw clenched. Sorry was an understatement for blowing up our life. But I let her continue. Lauren didn't hold back. She confessed the affair had been going on for several months. The other man was a coworker named Kevin, and it began innocently with her confiding in him when she felt overwhelmed and unappreciated. It escalated into an emotional affair, and eventually a physical one about 2 months ago, with them meeting in secret and betraying me repeatedly. Listening to her halting admission, I felt sick to my stomach. I asked if she loved him, if she wanted to leave us for him. She shook her head frantically, insisting he meant nothing compared to our family, and that she'd already cut off contact with him. She sobbed that she never stopped loving me and the kids, and that this was the worst mistake of her life. I struggled to believe any of her words now. I told her I didn't know if I could ever trust her again. She broke down and begged me for a chance to make things right, pleading that we try marriage counseling or anything to rebuild, especially for the sake of Emily and Jake. Part of me wanted to scream that it was hopeless, but when I pictured our children's faces, I felt I had to at least make an attempt for them. Finally, in a numb voice, I agreed that we would seek counseling. I made it clear I wasn't promising forgiveness or that it would save us, but I would try to swallow my pain long enough to see if we could fix any of this for the kids' sake. That night, I slept in the guest room. Or, rather, I lay there staring at the ceiling, my mind churning with anger and grief. The few hours of sleep I managed were full of nightmares. The road ahead felt uncertain and agonizing. But at least we had a plan. Keep life as stable as possible for the kids, start counseling, and see if there was anything left of our marriage worth saving. The next few weeks were a strange limbo. Though we tried to keep our marital problems behind closed doors, it was impossible to hide everything from the children. They clearly sensed the tension. Emily especially watched us with worried, knowing eyes. I reassured them with half-truths like, "Mom and Dad just have some grown-up things to work out, but we both love you so much," but I could tell they weren't fully convinced. In fact, Emily overheard snippets of our arguments in the night and realized her mother had broken a serious promise to me, even if she didn't know all the details. The uncertainty and unease in our home was already affecting them, and that guilt ate away at both of us. Counseling sessions began the following Tuesday. We sat in a warm, beige therapist's office where I vented weeks of bottled-up anger and hurt. Lauren cried through most of it, apologizing over and over and acknowledging how badly she'd broken my trust. The therapist gently guided us in communication exercises, but every time I expressed my pain, I could see it crush Lauren. A part of me felt guilty for how brutal my honesty was, saying things like, "I don't know if I even like you anymore," and "Every time I look at you, I see him." But the counselor said honesty was necessary if we wanted any chance to heal. Despite all our efforts, I could feel our marriage continuing to crumble under the weight of what had happened. 2 months passed, and the trust between us was still shattered. I was constantly on edge, suspicious of every little thing. One evening, when Lauren was simply late returning from a quick grocery errand, I immediately assumed the worst and confronted her with accusations the moment she walked in. She swore nothing had happened, and it truly hadn't. But that moment made me realize how broken we really were. I was turning into someone I didn't want to be, a paranoid, angry shell of myself. Living in constant distrust was tearing me apart, and it wasn't healthy for any of us, especially the kids. So that night, I finally told her that I wanted a divorce. Lauren collapsed into sobs, begging me to reconsider and give it more time. She promised she would wait as long as it took for me to heal and trust her again. But my mind was made up. I just couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't keep pretending that I could get past this. In my heart, I knew our marriage was beyond saving. We broke the news to the kids that weekend. We tried to be gentle, but nothing could soften the blow. The moment they heard that Mom and Dad would be living in separate homes, their world collapsed. Jake burst into sobs, wailing, "I don't want you to divorce," as he clung to Lauren. Emily went very quiet, tears streaming down her face. Then she whispered, "You promised to try, you lied." Hearing that from our 11-year-old was like a knife to the heart. She turned and ran upstairs to her room, slamming the door behind her. Here he lays. It took us hours to console them that night. We took turns holding them, reassuring them over and over that we both loved them, and that none of this was their fault. There were far more tears than words. Eventually exhaustion set in, and they cried themselves to sleep in our arms, but I knew their pain and confusion were far from over. After we finally got the kids to bed, I found Lauren sitting on the hallway floor, back against the wall, crying into her hands. "I've wrecked everything," she kept sobbing. I had no comfort to give. She had indeed broken our family, and now we all had to live with the consequences. Picking up the pieces. Lauren moved out of our house a few weeks later. We agreed to split custody of the kids, and I kept the family home so Emily and Jake could have stability. Saying goodbye to her that day, watching her drive off with boxes of her belongings, was surreal and heartbreaking, but also a strange relief. Our marriage was over. Now we had to focus on raising the children as co-parents from separate homes. The divorce process itself was relatively quick, made easier by the fact that Lauren didn't contest anything. I maintained polite, businesslike communication with her when it came to the kids' schedules, but otherwise we kept our distance. In the months after, I threw myself into being the best single dad I could be. It was a struggle at first, balancing work, school drop-offs, meals, homework, all on my own, but it also gave me purpose. I enrolled the kids in counseling to help them process everything. Slowly, we settled into a new routine. We still had our movie nights. I still attended every soccer game and school play. Bit by bit, the kids began to smile and laugh again. It wasn't always easy. Some nights Jake would cry and ask why Mommy couldn't come home, or I'd find Emily quietly tearing up at an old family photo. I did my best to reassure them that they were loved and that things would be okay, even if life was different now. As for me, I also sought therapy and leaned on close friends and family. I had to confront my own pain and self-doubt. Over time, I came to accept that no matter how good a husband I tried to be, Lauren's decision to cheat was her own. That realization helped me let go of a lot of bitterness and guilt. I won't say I healed quickly. There were plenty of sleepless nights and moments of lingering anger. But day by day, I found myself feeling a little more whole. I began to enjoy the little things again. Making pancakes with the kids on Saturday mornings, taking them on bike rides, even just having a quiet cup of coffee on a peaceful morning. Those moments reminded me there was still goodness in our lives. Lauren remained a part of the kids' lives, of course, but she had to face the consequences of what she'd done. She lived alone in a small apartment and saw the children according to our custody schedule. I know she tried to be a good mother during her time with them, and they did love her, but especially in the beginning, I could see the strain. Emily was polite but kept a certain distance from her mom, and that distance pained Lauren more than anything. At school events or drop-offs, I'd catch her watching Emily and Jake with a look of profound sadness, as if every smile from the kids was a reminder of what she'd lost. About 6 months after the split, Lauren called me one night out of the blue. Her voice was shaky with tears as she told me once again how sorry she was, that not a day went by she didn't regret breaking our family. She admitted she was struggling with the loneliness and the guilt. Listening to her cry softly over the phone, I felt a swell of mixed emotions. I realized I no longer felt hatred for her, just a deep sorrow. I told her I understood her remorse, and that for what it was worth, I forgave her as much as I could, though I could never forget. She cried even harder at that, thanking me through her sobs. It was a painful conversation, but it brought a small measure of closure. By a year after the divorce, life had stabilized. The kids were doing better, getting good grades, laughing like themselves again. They'd adjusted to shuttling between two homes. I won't pretend it was perfect. There were still tough days, and likely there always will be. But we found a new normal. I poured my energy into being the best parent I could, and in that I found purpose and a sense of pride. I wasn't ready to date anyone seriously yet. Learning to trust again will take time, but I was open to the idea that not every relationship is doomed to end like this. As for Lauren, she will always carry the weight of her choices. We remain civil and cooperative for the kids' sake. She hasn't remarried or anything. As far as I know, she's still single and trying to figure out her life. I can see the regret in her eyes every time we trade the kids for visitation. She lost the life we built, and she knows it. Looking back now, I do have moments of sadness for what could have been, but I also feel a sense of hard-won peace. I survived the worst pain of my life and came out the other side. My children are safe and loved, and I'm okay. In fact, in some ways I'm stronger and more grateful for what I have. Our family is different now, fractured in some ways, but we are moving forward together. As I watch Emily and Jake sleeping soundly under my roof, I know that the three of us are going to be all right. I weathered the storm that nearly drowned me, and now I'm sailing on calmer waters with my kids by my side. Wow. Just reading this story leaves me with such a heavy heart. I can't imagine the pain he went through, but I'm truly amazed at how he held it together for his kids. It's definitely heartbreaking, yet there's a sense of relief that he and the children found stability afterward. The wife's regret is palpable. She lost so much due to one awful decision, and I feel for everyone involved, especially the kids. In the end, I'm glad to see the husband rise above the betrayal to provide a loving environment for his children. It's a tough situation, but he clearly came out stronger on the other side.